Thank you, and welcome to the Patriots 300 Level Podcast. My name is Eric, and I'm joined by my co-host Kevin. Welcome back for our 22nd episode this week, where we'll be breaking down last weekend's playoff games and discussing news around the NFL. As a reminder, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Pats 300 Level Pod for up-to-the-minute updates and commentary on news of the day. So, Kevin, no Patriots game to talk about this week. What were your thoughts of just this exciting four playoff games this past weekend, which obviously were more exciting than the previous weekend for pretty much all the games? What were your thoughts overall? And did anything stick out to you in particular?
Yeah, I think the thoughts are pretty much what everyone's saying after watching this. This was an incredible four games.
Yeah.
Every game ended up on the last drive of the game. And usually I think we had mentioned this last week, that the divisional playoff game week is usually the best week of football to watch, just because you have all the great teams going and you've got four games going. It's not like you just have the two to watch on the championship weekend. And it's a lot better talent than just the wild card weekend where they claim the super wild card weekend sort of thing. But you have a lot of teams there that shouldn't have been there in the first place. And kind of the matchups based on having like a 2 versus 7 instead of having two different pies, and maybe may even look a little bit better if they added an extra team. So that way the gap isn't as big. So then you have a 3 versus 8 instead of a 2 versus 7, where usually the top two teams are a little bit higher up, and then the next tier goes from 3 on. So I thought it was one of the best weekends of football I've ever watched, at least. And I think all of them are entertaining. A lot of the outcomes that happened, I was pretty happy with, especially Jimmy and the Bills losing. So yeah, I think it was a pretty good weekend.
I agree. It was actually nice because it was stress free. I didn't have any vesting interest on any of the teams. Like, there were obviously teams I was rooting for. I was rooting for the Bucks and Brady. I was rooting against the Bills, rooting for the 49ers, but it wasn't that heart throbbing game where you feel like you're gonna have a heart attack in the fourth quarter, aka the Buccaneers and Cowboys games earlier this year. So it was nice to be able to relax a little bit and just watch football and enjoy it. It's sort of like college football for me, where I don't really have a team, so I can just watch football and enjoy it. So it was like that. And then all the games, like you said, every single game ending on the final play of the game. You just can't ask for more than that. And I know I didn't pick most of the games correctly, but I'm glad with how most of the outcomes ended, except for the Rams Bucks game.
Yeah. I think we kind of just go straight into it. The Titans Bengals game, the first one. This was probably you guys said the Saturday games were probably the sloppiest of the bunch. And the Titans just gave this away to the Bengals. If they had any decent quarterback play, and you've said this and we both said this, Tannehill's not a good quarterback, and he's really propped up by the running game and by Derrick Henry. And Derrick Henry wasn't right in this game.
Yeah.
They kept feeding him, and I think they fed the ball too much, and I think they could have used Foreman a lot more. And I think just Tannehill's incompetence and lack of being a good quarterback really screwed them. He had 3 interceptions. He really was the reason why they lost this game. And they had all the opportunities to win this, and he was, I think, one of the sole reasons why they lost this game.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. I thought the one thing that helped the Titans a lot was they were able to get pressure on Joe Burrow and sacking him 9 times, which is outrageous. But like you said, this is why I didn't, even with the Titans being the number 1 seed, having the bye, this is why I didn't believe in them, even late in the year when they were without Derrick Henry. But even when they did have Derrick Henry, I didn't believe in them because you don't need a superstar like one of the top 2 quarterbacks to win in the Super Bowl. We saw that in 2017 with Nick Foles. We saw it in 2019 when Jimmy almost won. But you do need competent quarterback play, and that's something that Ryan Tannehill just doesn't do. He can do enough to help you or to just get by, but he can't win you a game. And sometimes, like we saw this weekend, he lost you the game. And it just, I know we both mentioned this several times throughout the year and even dating back the past couple of years, but the 2019 offseason, Ryan Tannehill was a free agent. Tom Brady was a free agent. The Titans decided to go with Ryan Tannehill, 4 years, $120 million, $30 million a year. they passed on Tom Brady, who was only asking 2 years, $50 million. They gave more money per year to Ryan Tannehill than they did Tom Brady. It just makes no sense. If they had Tom Brady, I don't know if they would have won last year or this year, but they would have been close. The Titans were the number 1 seed this year with Ryan Tannehill as their quarterback. How good would they be if they had Tom Brady? And then the other thing that sucks for them is this game kind of showed Ryan Tannehill isn't the answer for them. His cap hit goes up from 11 million this year to 38 million next year. So they're kind of screwed because unless something changes and something clicks, they're just not going to be able to take that next step with him as their quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing to mention. We've mentioned it multiple times where how much better off would they've been if Brady was there, and how would, and we'll probably get into this a little bit later on, but how would Brady's mindset be if he was there instead of Tampa, where he actually had a coach he respected? Yeah, I would assume he would probably respected, but who knows? He blows. Yeah, it seems like he's running his way out of everywhere right now. But Vrabel, at least you and I believe, is one of the top coaches in the league, and has a lot of football smarts, just like Belichick. But it would have been really interesting what would have happened if Brady went there. I'm actually glad he didn't, just because it'd make it even harder. But just him with kind of having a running game and having Brown is a big piece. I think that would really bode well for them if they did have him. And then the other part in this game too, you mentioned that the 9 pressures that they had on Burrow. Part of the reason why too, though, the Bengals offensive line is terrible. It wasn't good last year, and that's the reason why he ended up getting hurt and tearing his ACL. They're gonna get this kid killed if they don't fix this. And there's plenty of things that you could do as a coach to at least avoid that amount of sacks in the game. I know Burrow kind of holds the ball a little bit too long, I feel like. But having an extra blocker in there, having your tight ends chip, doing those little things that we see the Patriots do when they're having blocking issues. It's just that when you get to 9, how do you get to 9 sacks without trying to do any of those sorts of things? And they just have to watch out with him.
Yeah, it's a good point, because in the draft last year, that was the big debate was, do they draft Jamar Chase, who was his favorite target at LSU, or do they draft I'm blanking on the guy's name, the left tackle that the Lions drafted, who is arguably one of the best the best tackle in the draft, one of the best tackles in the last few drafts. And they went with Chase, which we've seen what that did for their offense. But part of the reason why they were finished so low last year is because Burrow got hurt because of no offensive line. And then, like you said, he does hold the ball a little long. And then something that Pat's Buzz on Twitter, I believe it was them, brought up several times was, if you look at the pressures this weekend, which we'll get into in a little bit, the pass rush win rate, I believe the Titans were about 55%, and then the Rams were 53%. So right around the same thing of what Tom Brady was facing versus what Joe Burrow was facing. Joe Burrow got sacked 9 times. Brady only got sacked 3 times. So he is young. So part of it is him holding the ball too long, where he'll have to learn that eventually. But part of it is also just knowing when to throw the ball out, but also if you're able to just, like you said, chip or have a tight end hold it, just so it gives the quarterback another half second to throw.
Yep. And I think the big thing is kind of going into the next game, the Packers 49ers game. We can kind of merge these two a little bit. You saw the difference in how Jimmy was in the pocket versus how Brady was in the pocket, where Brady, and he's one of the best at it, where he can maneuver himself in the pocket, avoiding the rush. Jimmy, compared to Brady, and Jimmy, I always thought was pretty good at doing that, but for this game, he kind of looked like a statue. I don't know if it's just him getting lost in the moment, or the weather, or trying to deal with an injury, which he never has dealt with before while playing. So it may be too much on his mind. But the amount that he got sacked from just not moving up or moving a little bit to his left, a little bit to his right, just to kind of avoid that sort of thing. And we've seen it with Mac too, where Mac is able to, he's not as good as Brady with it, but he looks pretty Brady-like, not saying that he is him in the pocket, but he does have that movement, and something that after watching him this season, it's kind of shocking not to see Jimmy do it. And
that was actually one thing I was just going to quickly mention was I am Brady by far, of any quarterback I've ever seen, is the best pocket mobility. He's not the fastest, not going to run, but for sensing pressure, stepping up in the pocket, avoiding pressure, he's by far the best. And that's something that Mac Jones has actually really impressed me this year. Is he's not to Brady's level yet, but for a rookie be able to avoid pressure in the pocket as well as he does, that's just really impressive to me. Just thought of it now. Just want to bring it up. Sorry for cutting in.
No, that's right. So moving on to the next game, the Packers 49ers. This was a completely sloppy game between both teams. Aaron Rodgers choked again. It's his fourth loss against the 49ers. He has as many NFC playoff wins as Tom Brady has. And he's been in the NFC much longer than Tom Brady has. And Jimmy Garoppolo, as much as I love him, looked god awful in this game. They won despite of him, or in spite of him, or whatever the saying is.
In spite of him.
In spite. That doesn't matter. He was awful. But I would like to say when they needed him to step up, he kind of did at the end of the game. He had two big passes at the end of the game. He was 5 for 7 on the last drive. And he really got them into field goal position. I thought he actually stepped up, and the thing about Jimmy is we both agree he's not tough, and that's his biggest flaw. But he always wins. And like I said the other episode before, he's got, I think, the third highest winning percentage of any quarterback that's played that started more than 50 games. You don't get that from just being lucky. If it was,
you can get it by having a good team around you. If you look
get
at
it from being a good team.
Look at Ryan Tannehill the last 2.5 years, though. He has a really good winning percentage. He was the number 1 seed this year. It wasn't because of Ryan Tannehill. It was because of the team around him.
But there's something about Jimmy where, at least from the thing I remember the most was his first season with the 49ers, where he led, I think it was
like
4 to 5 comeback wins, and just the poise and the command that he had. I think some of that has kind of digressed a little bit as he's been with the 49ers. I really blame Shanahan on this. I think if he stayed with Belichick in the Patriots, I think he'd be a much better quarterback as it is. I don't think Shanahan's utilized him to his best ability. And I think Shanahan kind of still resents having him. And the fact that he's been as tough as he is this year to kind of play through these sort of injuries, and these are real injuries, at least the thumb injury. He's got a torn ligament. He's got bone chips in his thumb. It's not something that's easy to play through. The fact that he's at least trying to go out there, who knows what the shoulder injury is, probably nothing, but let's say it is an AC joint separation like he had before. That's tough to play through. It's not something that's easy. So you got to give him credit there. He just, it looked like all those passes to the boundaries, he was looking to get picked off. There was probably, there was more than a handful of times where he was lucky he did not get picked off in this game.
There were two that I can think of in particular that should have easily been pick sixes, not just interceptions, just pick sixes that were just horrendous throws.
Yeah. But I think the biggest storyline of this game isn't even Jimmy. It's the fact that Aaron Rodgers completely choked in this game. All he needed was to have one drive other than the first drive to win them this game, and he couldn't do it. And I think that's just the big thing. That's the reason why it was some people like Spike King want to entertain Aaron Rodgers coming to the Patriots. I would never want him in this organization. Number one, I don't think he'd be a good fit with Bill. I don't think he'd be willing to learn. Number two, he's a loser. He's not a winner. There's some people have that it factor. Some people don't. I just don't think that when push comes to shove, he's a big winner. I think he's all about himself. I don't think he cares more about the team. Puts himself first. He doesn't always run the play that's supposed to be ran. He kind of improvises all the time. And that's just not something you could do in the NFL, especially when all these teams are scheming against you. You can't try and run around and just make a play every single time. So
I agree. I think depends on the situation of if I'd want him here or not. Last year, I'd rather have Aaron Rodgers than Cam Newton. But like right now, I'd rather have Mac just because of Aaron Rodgers' whole demeanor. It always seems like he's causing issues and everything. But like you said, in big situations, he always crumbles. His last two playoff games, this game, and then also the game versus
Bucks.
the Bucks last year, his last 5 throws of both games were incompletions. And if they weren't, he would have had a shot to win both.
And then the Bucks game, all he had to do was he had an easy path into the end zone.
Yep.
And what does he do? He doesn't even see it, and he throws an incompletion.
Yeah. And then the thing with him too is that like you said, he is about himself a lot. We saw that this year, where part of the reason why he's going to win MVP is because of his stats. But I think they threw the ball, I believe, 13 times on the 1 yard line to get him. I think it was like 7 or 8 touchdowns throwing from the 1 yard line. But also, a lot of why all the statisticians and all the analytic people are praising him is because of his efficiency. But efficiency doesn't always equate to winning. In the regular season, it can, but in crunch time, it's typically being conservative, where in the playoffs, you have to be more aggressive. And that's something that he just doesn't do. And it just doesn't. I think that's part of the reason why it just doesn't translate to him winning in the playoffs, is he's trying to be more efficient, more conservative instead of being aggressive.
Mm-hmm. And then I think the other key storyline of this was the special team play, where you look at the Packers, where I think they're ranked 32nd in the league in special teams. And the 49ers aren't really much better. They're, I think, 28th, or 26th going into the game. But it just kind of shows that all three phases really matter. And you don't have to be number one in special teams, but you can't be number 32. And that's when bad things happen with the field goal block, and then that punt block. So
it reminded me a bit of the Patriots Steelers game in 01, where that game was more of a blowout per se, but the Patriots only won by 7, and 2 of those touchdowns. That's the game when Drew Bledsoe came in, where he did enough, but he wasn't really great. I think it had less than 50% completion percentage, 1 touchdown. But the main reason why they won was a 55-yard touchdown by Troy Brown, and then the blocked field goal return for a touchdown. So 14 points off special teams, and they only won by 7. And that game kind of reminded me of that too, where it wasn't the exact same play, but it was kind of not really efficient on offense, but special teams is what when teams weren't really, a lot of teams overlook special teams. And it seems like that's what the Packers have done all year, and it finally caught up to them.
Yeah. 100% agree. So it should be interesting to see what happens now after this loss, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Going on next, Rams Bucks. This game really kind of reminded me of, everyone says the Atlanta game with the 28-3.
Yeah,
I think it's less about that and more reminds me of that Chargers game back in, I think, 2006.
The playoff game.
The playoff game.
Yeah, that was 2006.
Yeah, 2006, where they had no business winning that game. And that's the one where Troy Brown ended up punching out the interception to cause a fumble and get the ball back afterwards, where the Rams did everything to give this game back to the Bucks. It wasn't really Tom driving, like having this great second half where he was unbelievable. They still weren't that good in the second half. They scored more because they were giving the ball more, and they did a little bit more with it. But I don't think this is a fantastic Brady performance in the end, as much as I would like to say it was, to kind of make that storyline. I think it was more just about the Rams crapping themselves every point they could get. They had the fumble before halftime with Akers. And then you have the fumble at the end, where all he had to do is, if he did not fumble there, they would have won the game, because he was basically going to get a first down on that drive. I know it was a little bit short of it, but by the time he goes down, he's probably getting that first down. That would have ended the entire game. There was the snap, I think the most laughable play was the shotgun snap that went to the 50-yard line, which gave the Bucks a better field position they would have had than before. So they just did everything to try and lose this game. And part of it, I don't think most of it really wasn't on Stafford as much as I would like to blame him, because I still think he's a choke artist. But the Rams, my God, they did not look good in this.
Yeah, for me, it actually reminded me a lot of the 2015 AFC Championship game, where Brady was under pressure the entire game, a lot because of Von Miller.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had no business winning that game either,
Mm-hmm.
but he fought back, fought through the pressure, and then found a way to at least bring it close near the end. 2015, they got a touchdown with, I think, 12 seconds left, and then they just didn't convert the 2-point conversion, which would have brought it into overtime. This time, with 30 seconds left, 38 seconds, they score a touchdown to tie the game, and it should have gone into overtime. I thought Brady was good considering the situation where he was under duress the entire time. He was throwing to 4 of his top 6 wide receivers were out of the game, and then he was throwing to an older Gronk. So I know he still had Mike Evans, who's a Pro Bowler, but still, given the situations, the amount of pressure he was under, especially with the left tackle and right tackle being out of the game, I thought he played really well. But I think more of it throughout the entire game, I still had faith that the Buccaneers could come back and win, just because we've seen Brady do it so many times, even when they were down 27-3. I was just thinking back to the Atlanta game, and the only similarities with the Atlanta game is the score, 28-3, 27-3, and the Rams kind of crapping the bed, whereas the Falcons, it was the dumb calls by the coaching staff when it was they were in field goal range, and they decide to pass, and then they get sacked and get out of field goal range where a field goal wins the game, and that type of stuff. This game, it was more just turnovers, unforced turnovers. But my God, I just don't. I really wish the Bucs won, because that would have been a hell of a storyline for a team that goes all in to shit the bed in the last game in the second half. But I don't know how you can make all those errors and then still come back to win, which just Todd Bowles. But
yeah, I think that's one thing too about this game, where the play calls that they had, where this is something where this wouldn't usually happen on the Patriots. Sometimes it did this year, but usually where Bill goes in and he identifies the 1 or 2 players that are going to give your team the most trouble, and he will not let that person beat you. And going into this, you have to know that Kupp is their number 1 receiver. You have to do anything to not let him beat you. You have all these other players, and they are kind of deep on the wide receiver end. They've got OBJ. You got the
Jefferson's
other
good.
Yeah, but you have to know that you can't let Kupp beat you, and you also got to realize they've only got how many seconds left? 30.
I think 30 or 5 seconds with no timeouts.
Yeah, and so this is a little bit different than the Kansas City route, where if they have no timeouts, they have to try and make the play there. Whereas Kansas City at least had some timeouts, but you got to go into somewhat of a prevent defense, maybe not completely, but you got to guard the boundaries, and you got to make sure that if they do get a play, they're inbounds and they kill a lot of clock, and you don't have big plays. And what do they do? They let up 2 huge plays to Kupp, and that just was a killer.
You go with an all-out blitz, cover 0 with a safety covering Kupp. I don't understand, at least if you're trying to be aggressive and then you have your best cornerback covering him, but you have a safety with no help over the top. I have no idea what the hell he was thinking.
Yeah.
You would think, if anything, he's had one of the best receiver years of all time. You have your best cornerback covering him, or your second best cornerback covering him with safety help over the top. But to just have a safety covering him and to let him get by you. And that's something that happened earlier in the game too, where Kupp got a long touchdown because he just got by the defense, where he's the one person that you just know you have to either double or you just can't let get by you.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's not like that's the first time it happened. It was twice in that game, and I don't get it at all.
Yep. And if I was another team, number one, I would have second thoughts about Bowles, just because I don't think he was that great on the Jets. But no one's really great on the Jets. But some of his calls in this game, I know they don't have the players to really make some of them, so you have to be a little aggressive, but you have to be a little bit smart too. The other thing about this game,
I was going to bring this up after we talk about the Bills Chiefs game, but after this weekend, if I'm an owner, I don't understand any way how I could hire Todd Bowles or Leslie Frazier to be my head coach. Not only to hire them internally, but also just how you sell that to the fans after what happened this weekend with both of them.
Yeah, I think that's a big point to bring up. And then just another part of this game that I didn't even think I asked you about this before, but Brady's demeanor in this game, it's something that reminded me. I know we've talked a lot after this, just what he's been saying. Sounds a
Yeah.
lot like back in 2019, but his demeanor in the game too. He never had that look on his face like he was going to be coming for you, that he really wanted to
Yeah.
win. He was really invested in this game. It seemed like he just didn't really want to be there.
Yep.
And the only time he looked like he had that fire in him was when he was yelling at not Ed Hockley, at
Sean
whatever
Hockey.
Hockley's son's name is.
Yeah. I think it's Sean.
That's the only kind of fire in him that we really saw. Even after the touchdown, he didn't have that excitement that you usually see when this sort of thing happens with him. So it's something to watch. I think that's in our 15 questions, which
Yeah.
is triple the questions that we usually will have. But we can kind of really discuss that a little bit more in depth then.
No, I just quickly talking about that. That
Yep.
was something I noticed too. Not only during the game, he didn't have that crazy Tom Brady look, but even after the game, typically after a loss, he's pissed. He won't talk. Usually, he'll just either quickly do a handshake or won't even do it and just goes to the locker room because he's pissed off about how they lost. After the game, he was laughing, talking with people from the other teams, which I have never seen in my entire life from Tom Brady after a loss, let alone a playoff loss. So that was something that we'll talk about a little bit, but I don't know.
I think you know how I feel with this.
Yeah.
So going on the last game, Bills Chiefs so they saved the best for last for this. Not the best defense because I think we'll talk about this in shortly. It was part of the problem, I think, where it made this such a huge swing and kind of made some people kind of overreact after this game. But it was a really great game to watch, really entertaining. Insane amount of points scored the last 2 minutes. I haven't checked, but if I would assume that's got to be some sort of record, at least a playoff record.
I think it was 25 points the last minute 53 of just regulation.
Mm-hmm. And it's just something unheard of, and it was crazy to watch and fun to watch, and it was really nice to watch the Bills lose. And I think that the thing like from this game, and we'll be asking this a little bit later on, but Josh Allen's kind of emergence in this game of kind of stepping up in the big light where usually he crumbles. This one he was going against a pretty depleted Kansas City defense. So part of it, I don't want to give him full credit for it, but I also have to understand that he was really good in this game. The last 2 games, even though the Patriots defense is terrible, he's got 144 rating and 9 touchdowns. And I think only 14 incompletions. So he played really well. I think this really kind of just highlights where he has elite talent. And I've never really questioned that. It's just, can he put it all together? And the other thing is, will he last? And we've seen quarterbacks like this. Most recently, Cam Newton. He's about the same size. He's big. He wasn't as good of a thrower as him, but we can talk about this a little bit later. So Mahomes, I think really stepped up in this game, and was probably one of his best games of the year. I know this whole year he's kind of been on and off, and I think part of that's still that turf toe injury that he's been dealing with, why he hasn't looked the same. But this is clearly the best game that he had. And it was actually kind of fun to root for him, where I usually can't stand him just basically because of his brother and his partner.
Yeah. No, I agree. I thought Allen had a hell of a game, and just the last 3 games that I've watched of him, the Patriots regular season game, the Patriots playoff game, and this game, he was just unbelievable. Seemed like he can't do anything wrong, and it looks like he's taking that next step. We'll talk about it in a little bit what we really think, but he had one of the best 2-game playoff stretches in history, and you have to just give credit to him. Mahomes, like you said, had a game of the year. I think part of that is due to the Bills' defense and the strategy that they had. They were allowing a lot of. This is the thing that I don't get, and a lot of teams do this. They allowed Travis Kelce free release, and especially the last 2 minutes or the last 13 seconds. But Travis Kelce is such a little bitch and such a baby that if you just pressure him, that's something that Bill has always done is you get in his face, jam him at the line and get him off his route. He just can't run. He's not the same receiver, not the same tight end. And I don't understand why the Bills didn't do that. I don't understand why Lions don't do that. And just the one thing that just stood out to me is that Tyreek Hill touchdown, his speed is just unfathomable. How I have no idea on our crossing route with people in front of him just to outrun them from even when people had better angles. It was fun to watch, actually rooting for the Chiefs to just see that touchdown. But boy, is he fast.
I know, and that's something I looked up right after the touchdown because I gotta see how fast this guy is. I was like, what's this 40 time? It's got to be like 4.2 or like something insane, like 4.1, 4.19, 4.15, and he ran a 4.29, which is still fast, but it's not something where what you see. So I don't know if it's just something where he didn't have a great time, or maybe it's just because
he also did have he did have the off-field issues right around the time of the draft, which is why he fell. So he might have not been training appropriately.
Yeah,
but
so that could have been it. But
just the balls of him to give the peace sign to someone that's 5 yards in front of him is just insane.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite memes after the game. Saying it's psychotic that knowing that you're that fast to outrun someone in front of you. I think the other thing that comes out of this game where McDermott's going to may not live this down if they never win a Super Bowl.
Yeah,
where his coaching decisions at the end of the game really killed him. Where you had the opportunity, where I get not wanting to scrub it because you never want to make them, like, let's say it bounces out at the 40 or something like that.
Yeah.
Or they like fair catch it at the 40 where it does the same thing. Yeah. But if you could pooch kick it, which the Patriots do all the time, where you get it to the 5-yard line, or you get to the 10-yard line, you force them to run them out. And that's going to take a good 5 to 7 seconds off the clock. And that only gives Mahomes 1 to 2 plays instead of 3 plays to get there. And maybe they're trying to kick a 60-yard field goal, which he's probably not making in that cold. And then the other fact too, where McDermott took 2 timeouts in between those 2 plays to try and get the right defense on the spot, and he still couldn't. So it's just, I think that he's a decent coach. I just think he loses his mind all the time, and I just don't know what he was doing. I don't know if they're too confident that they're going to win. But again, I can't say that's something you never see the Patriots do, because back in 2018. They allowed almost the same thing to happen with 23 seconds left. But it's just, I think that's a huge kind of question mark that you would have to have in this game would be why did they not at least pooch kick it? Why did they kick it out of the end zone?
The pooch kick, I would understand if you had Tyreek Hill back there, which I know he returns punts sometimes, or if you had Devin Hester, someone of that ability. But not having them back, I don't understand why they didn't at all, because it would have eaten up some clock.
Yeah.
But then also the 2 defensive plays that they had, the Chiefs had all their timeouts. They were guarding the sidelines to prevent them from going out of bounds, and they were essentially doing Hail Mary prevent touchdown defense, which I'd understand. Since you have Tyreek Hill, maybe have one person back there on his side to make sure he doesn't get by you so you don't lose the game. But they're leaving the middle of the field wide open for 30-40 yards, which is essentially how how Travis Kelce just went wide open to get in field goal range. It's just, I don't understand that decision at all. I don't know how much of it is on McDermott, how much of it is on Frazier. But like you said, him calling the timeout before the play, he should at least have some input, even if he's not the one that called the play. And then the other thing with the Bills is they did have the number 1 defense going into in the regular season. I think part of that was a little overinflated based on the competition that they faced. And then also them being without Tre'Davious White the second half of the year. But I think, I don't know if it's more just Mahomes and the Chiefs is that much better, or if it was just terrible game planning, or the Bills just aren't as good as their numbers say they are.
Yep, that's the other thing I wanted to get to, where I think they were kind of exposed in this too, where the Patriots have been exposed with the Bills, where they're pretty similar to how the Patriots are, where they could get exposed if you spread them out. And their lack of speed at linebacker and some of their other coverage units really get exposed where they play more of a zone defense. So it's kind of the same sort of situation where the Patriots kind of fell into. The Bills were probably one of the best teams to beat their type of defense. Chiefs would be the same sort of thing, but you get a team that could spread you out, and that's when they really got exposed. And the same thing really happened to the Bills, where they have a similar type of defense for this year. And also, you look at the strength of schedule for that they had to play. Their defense kind of got propped up a little bit more than it really should have been. So I think that's another big thing, like you had mentioned. But I think they weren't as good as their stats had said. I think they got exposed by one of the few teams that could expose them in this situation, where the Patriots may not be able to, just because they don't have all the weapons to do so. But Kansas City did.
Yep, no, I agree.
And then overtime, I don't think there's really much to really recap. I just think it was an amazing kind of catch and play by like Kelsey and Mahomes. And you really knew pretty much whoever got the ball was probably going to go down and win it, unless Allen would pee down his leg. But
I've not much more to add. I know we'll get to it in a little bit too, but nothing else really.
So this weekend, we usually do 3 up, 3 down because there's so many great games. And 4 games. We're gonna do 5 up, 5 down. Next week we'll probably go back to 3 up, 3 down for the week. So if you want to give your first one, we can kind of quickly just go.
I'll just give my 5, and then you can give your 5.
All
right. My 5 were Josh Allen. Nothing much more to add other than before. He was just unbelievable again. Patrick Mahomes had his best game of the year. Gabriel Davis, my number 3, where he had 4 touchdowns, and then if the Bills got the ball in overtime, he could have had a 5th touchdown. Number 4 is Brady. I thought, given the conditions, being without 4 of your top 6 wide receivers this year, being without your two offensive tackles, and then being pressured more than 50% of the time, to only be sacked 3 times, and to bring your team back from down 24 points late in the third quarter to have a shot to win it at the end, or to tie it and shot to go into overtime. And then number 5, I had the 49ers special teams.
Okay. So mine were half similar. So I've got Mahomes. Again, I think this is the best game he's played this year. He really elevated the team, played really well. Running game, passing game was really good in this game. Josh Allen, I always hate to say this, but he had a really good game. Again, looking at him, you get a question like, how do you even stop him when he's on? Where he's so big and like powerful, where how are you going to stop him when he's almost indefensible on those quarterback runs? And I think that's something that they've done a lot more of since that wind game. I think they started really more at the second half of the Bucs game, where they kind of unleashed him, and they've used him a lot more in that fashion. And he's really tough to bring down. So I think that's something that's really improved in his game recently. Gabriel Davis, like you said, 4 touchdowns. He's turned into a really good player recently. I remember being a little afraid of him after that Patriots win game, where he had that crossing route touchdown into the end zone against, I think it was against Mills. But he was a really good player in this. Eric Armstead from the 49ers, defensive lineman. I thought he got a lot of pressure on Rodgers. I think he looked pretty good in that game. Another defensive player, Logan Wilson, linebacker from Cincinnati. He was really all over the place in that game. And I thought he got some pressure and got some good coverages and good run stuffs. So those are my 5 up.
And then just talking about Gabriel Davis, just one thing is one person that was drafted ahead of Gabriel Davis in the 2019 draft, Dalton Keene. Patriots tight end / fullback / injured reserve, or 2020 draft. Sorry. So someone that's barely seen the field in 2 years with the Patriots. So who's your 5 down?
5 down. I've got Sean McDermott for his completely mismanagement at the end of that game. You can complain all about the overtime rules that you want. We're going to talk about that next. But you had 13 seconds to stop him. You had 13 seconds to come up with a plan you could pooch kick it. Then you've got probably 8 seconds to worry about. That's 1 to 2 plays. But they did none of that. Aaron Rodgers was my next one. Complete choke artist like usual. He could have put the team on his back and won that game. He did nothing of that sort. It doesn't look like that team is built to win in Green Bay, where they just the cold, the snow. This doesn't seem like they're really part of it. I know a lot of times they practice indoors, which I feel is it's not great to do. And I think we both agree that, and a lot of cold teams do that. Patriots don't, but I think that could be part of the problem with them. Ryan Tannehill is my next one. 3 interceptions. If he didn't have one of them, they'd probably win the game. He really handed the game to the Bengals. Mike Hyde and Poyer, combination one. They're supposed to be the 2 best safeties in the league, or at least in the AFC, and they did nothing really to stop Mahomes in that regard. And last one, Todd Bowles, or as I like to say, Todd Bowles, where he kind of shit the end of the game away by that coverage scheme against Cup. Those are my 5.
Yeah, so I had a lot of similar ones. There was a couple I'll get that I didn't, and I'll explain why. Or there was just the top 5 I thought were so bad that I couldn't include the other 2 I was thinking of. Number 1, the Bills coaching.
I was gonna say James.
We'll see. Number 1 was the Bills coaching staff of both McDermott and Leslie Frazier. They just were terrible all game, or their defense just couldn't stop Mahomes at all. I know they're going up against a good defense or a good offense, but those last 13 seconds in overtime, just like you said, decision not to push it or squib it, and then just allowing free release, essentially doing Hail Mary prevent defense instead of just normal defense. So that's my number 1. Number 2, Todd Bowles, just allowing Cooper Kupp to get by you the entire for 2 different big scores, and then just that last play on Cooper Kupp, an all-out blitz with a safety covering the best wide receiver in football. That's just inexcusable. Number 3, Ryan Tannehill. Like you said, he lost the Titans the game. He was just horrendous, and that's who I've always thought Ryan Tannehill is, and that's why I didn't fear the Titans this year or last year or the year before, just because I don't think he can win your game, and more than likely he could lose your game like he did this week. Number 4, the Bengals offensive line, allowing 9 sacks, allowing the Titans to have a rush win rate of 55 or 58%, which is insane. And then my number 5 is the Packers special teams, where they're ranked last in the league this year, and it kind of showed why. They allowed the blocked field goal and then the blocked punt for a touchdown, which lost them the game. The other 2 I wanted to include, but just couldn't, was Aaron Rodgers, like you said, and then Jimmy G, or I just thought he was absolutely horrendous as well. But unlike Tannehill, his team was able to do enough around him to help win the game.
All right. Yeah, we have pretty similar ones there. We're going to go to a lightning 15 questions, try and get through them as quick as possible. First one, do you like the current overtime rules, or should they be changed? And if they should be changed, what's your proposal?
I like the rules just the way they are. I think when they changed the rules in 2012, I believe, when they changed it from before, it was just sudden death, where if you kick a field goal in overtime, you win the game. I thought that was a little too ridiculous. You have to go 30, 40 yards to end the game, and especially with improved time compared to kickers in the early 2000s, where field goal percentages were much lower, especially from beyond. I think now is good because it's still tough to get a touchdown. Some people were bringing up the Falcons Super Bowl where the Patriots won, saying the Patriots won the coin toss and then that's why they won the game. But if you look at it, the Patriots defense stopped the Falcons the entire second half. Football is essentially 2.5 teams. It's offense, defense, and special teams, where special teams a lot of times won't have a huge impact on the game unless it loses you the game, like the Packers. But it is offense and defense wins championships. So if you do lose the coin toss, your defense still should be good enough to help you get the ball back. We saw in, I believe it was the 2018 playoffs as well, where people were complaining about the OT rules after the Patriots Chiefs game, but they didn't bring up that the Saints, who lost after the controversial no pass interference call, no pass interference call, they won the coin toss in overtime. They just couldn't get the touchdown, and that lost the game. The Rams defense was get the Rams offense the ball back. At least in the regular season, or since the new rules have passed, I believe teams have only scored a touchdown that won the coin toss less than 25% of the time. So it still is tough. I know in the playoffs it's a lot more heightened adrenaline, so you might get drained more quickly, but still defenses win championships. And if your team isn't able to stop another team going 80, 75 yards to get a touchdown, I don't know if you really deserve to win.
Yeah. I agree. I like the way that it is as well. I think it really emphasizes that the defense as well. It's not just offense, where a lot of people get hung up with like, oh, we're watching this great offensive like duel, and the other one should have the chance. Well, they would have the chance if the defense just stopped them. And that kind of just totally throws out defense if you do that. I think one option that I wouldn't hate would be something that Bill has proposed before, where you go to a non-sudden death and it's a 10-minute period, or I guess it'd be called a quarter. Well, something like a quarter because it's the last part, but a 10-minute round where you just play it out. And then at the end of the 10 minutes, if you're still tied, do another 10 minutes. So that wouldn't be bad. So if they did want to change it, that'd be the only other thing I'd want them to go to.
The only one other thing that I actually heard that I didn't hate was if you do something either before the game where, going into overtime, who's going to get the ball, either the home team, since it's the playoffs, they have the better record, or you do something ahead of time where that will possibly change how teams play the fourth quarter, especially if it's going to be a tie game, where if it's fourth and 2 and you're going to kick the field goal to go into overtime, but you're not getting the ball in overtime, maybe you go for the first down instead. So that's something I wouldn't hate. I like the current rules better than that, but that's something that if teams knew, I think that would definitely affect the strategy more.
All right. Moving on. Next question. Aaron Rodgers, why does he suck in the playoffs?
I think just like I said earlier, I think he just doesn't have that clutch gene, but also the way he plays, it's more efficiency, where he's more conservative and he's not aggressive. And in the playoffs, you have to be safe with the football, not turn it over recklessly, but you also have to be aggressive and try and go for those first downs or those big plays when you need it. And that's just something he doesn't do, where he's more focused on the stats and what it looks like.
Yep. I think he's a loser. I think he's just always going to be a loser. I think he's just he cares more about himself than the team. And I think that always just shows in that. So that's where I come out with that. Next question. What in these games tell you about where the Patriots currently are in the AFC and what's needed this offseason?
So I actually took some good and bad for the Patriots out of this. Looking at the Bills-Chiefs game, I think I saw that our defense is not good enough or fast enough to compete against these high-powered offenses. That was my number one takeaway. But I also saw how there were teams like the Titans and the 49ers who almost won and won with subpar quarterback play, quarterbacks that I think are worse than Mac, showing that you don't necessarily need that number one, number two overall or best quarterback in the league to win if you have a complementary football team around you. I think Mac will take that next step next year. I think he'll continue to progress. I think if the Patriots defense, that's the thing that concerns me, is are they able to stay with these fast-powered offenses? And right now, I don't think they are. They have to get faster at the linebacker position. They have to get faster at the cornerback position. They need better coverage at the cornerback. They have to get more pressure, whether it's getting another edge rusher, using Uche taking that next step, blitzing more, but they have to do more with that. And I think if their offense gets one more piece, I think that'll help them take that next step as well. Just another person that Matt can throw to. But I think that can be Aguilar and Jonnu Smith if they take that next step next year, having another offseason under their belt.
I couldn't say it better myself. I 100% agree. I think the biggest thing where a lot of people take out of this, where, how are you going to compete when you don't have a quarterback like Mahomes or you don't have a quarterback like Allen? You look at the other quarterbacks, like you said, and they're not all elite talent. Some of the elite talents lost. Aaron Rodgers lost. Tom Brady
Yep.
lost. Joe Burrow lost.
Joe Burrow won.
Oh, Joe Burrow won. Joe Burrow almost lost. He should have lost.
But like even the last round, Dak Prescott lost. Kyler Murray lost.
Yeah, you don't need these unicorn quarterbacks that can run and throw and do everything. Where a pocket passer is just fine. The biggest thing, like you said, is the defense, and that's something we said at the end of the season, and was something we're gonna get into in a few weeks from now, kind of breaking down this defense, what improvements are needed. But they need to get faster. They need more coverage cornerbacks. They need to be faster at linebacker. Like you said, they need a real nose tackle.
Jordan
And
Davis.
are they going to be able to do that all in one off season? I don't think they can. They could, if they do believe in some of their guys and kind of move pieces around.
Yeah.
You could have speed at linebacker. You could have McGrone, Uche.
Yeah.
Those sorts of players. You have McMillan coming back, and he's really impressed apparently in training camp before he tore his ACL. So,
and they re-signed him after he tore his ACL too, which was a good sign, at least, that they believe in him.
But it should be interesting to see. But it doesn't make me that concerned after watching this. I think they're closer than a lot of people think after watching this. I think it's those kind of unicorn games that really shock people and they kind of overreact, and it's kind of recency bias.
No, I agree.
So the next question, we talked a little bit with this. Was this Tom Brady's final game?
If you asked me this 2 weeks ago, I would say 100% no chance. I don't know. I really don't know. The last week and a half, I'm just getting the same eerie feeling that I had the 2 weeks leading up to Brady leaving the Patriots, where after the loss to the Titans, I thought there's no way he's leaving. A month into into the offseason, I thought there's no way he's leaving. But those 2 weeks leading up to free agency, I was like, I have a strange feeling he's leaving. And I think we saw it on the sideline. We've heard reports coming from reliable people like Scheffner, that wouldn't report it if the source is telling him he didn't trust or didn't believe. We saw his demeanor on the sideline where he didn't have that same fire that he did during the Falcons Super Bowl or the Patriots 2018 Super Bowl run, even last year. And then after the game when he lost, him just laughing it up with people on the opposing team, which we've just never seen. I think after the season he had, he's always said he wants to play to 45, and he just and he wants to play until he sucks. He didn't suck this year. He should have been MVP. He led the league, and he had one of, if not his best statistical years this year. So I think it's still tough for me to say he's going to give it all up after the year he had, with him still being on a very talented roster. But I don't know. I think I put it at 55% chance he comes back, which I never would have thought I'd be saying a couple weeks ago. It's still more than likely, but I think there's a decent shot he's done.
It wasn't his final game. He's coming back. The only reason he doesn't come back if he doesn't get his way and he throws a hissy fit and he retires because he hates Arians so much he doesn't want to come back and play for him. But other than that, he's coming back. He may not be coming back for the Buccaneers. And I think one thing that could be interesting is if he forces his way out and where's he go next? 49ers make a lot of sense. Goes back home. They finally get him, gives Lance another year to kind of develop underneath him. They can finally get rid of Jimmy G because they hate him. And it could be interesting to see. I'd love to see him in this mercenary role where he goes to team after team, 1 year contract. Can he win? And I think that actually kind of really reinvigorate him a little bit. I think you're hearing all the same stuff that you did back in 2019, the family, all this other stuff. And it's all a bunch of baloney because number one, he's saying all this family stuff. Did he mean it back in 2019? No, because when he came to the Bucs, he was back at OTAs. He was working out all the time. He was working out when he wasn't even supposed to be working out with the players. And what is he going to do if he does retire? He's going to be expanding TB12. He's not going to be with his family. He's going to be going out to all these different meetings, trying to reinvigorate the brand, meet with all these different places, go everywhere. It's not going to be spending any more time with them. It's just all an excuse to try and get something that he wants, and I think it's all a bunch of baloney.
I just, like you said about the coaching though, is do you think he'll be able to put up with Kyle Shanahan?
I think he could. I think Kyle Shanahan's also a loser, but I think he's better than Bruce Arians.
I think that's fair.
Next question. Where's Aaron Rodgers playing next year?
This is a tough one. I know you're going to disagree, but my gut tells me he's back in Green Bay just because there isn't really much better options for him to win other than Tampa if Brady leaves. If he goes, some of the rumors were if Broncos. I don't know if he's not going to win the division, if he's with the Broncos, Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs are going to win, and then there's a good shot, at least based on talent, that the Chargers should be the second best team. So there's a chance he could be the third best team. I don't see him going to the Saints because of their salary cap situation. I don't see the Packers trading him to inter-conference rival. Steelers makes sense. I could see him going there, but I'm going to just stick with Green Bay right now because that's going to give him the best shot to win. Because if he goes to Steelers, he still has to compete with the Bengals. He has to compete with the Ravens, has to compete with the Browns. So I think being in a division where every other team is rebuilding, I think the best place for him should be the Packers. And then I wouldn't be shocked if he goes somewhere else, but my gut is just telling me he's going to stay.
I originally was going to say the Broncos on this, but the more I thought about it, like you said, for some reason he wants to go there. And a lot of the quarterbacks want to go there. I don't know why.
Yeah. They have some good receivers,
but I'm going to change my decision and I'm going to go with the Steelers. I'm going to go with the Steelers, and I don't think Jimmy's going to go there now. I think Jimmy's going to go to Tampa. He's going to replace Brady. Brady's going to go to 49ers, and that's going to be a whole nice little hogwash of things. He's going to have some really good weapons with Pittsburgh. He's fine with the cold weather. He'll probably get along with what's his name because he can deal with jackasses because we've seen what he's done with Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, all that sort of thing. So
an interesting situation. It'll never happen, but theoretically a 4-team trade where Brady goes to the 49ers, Jimmy G goes to the Seahawks, Russell Wilson goes to the Packers, and Aaron Rodgers goes to Tampa.
It could be interesting too.
Yeah, it never happened, but it makes sense if all those people want out and then they're still getting a quality quarterback in return.
Yeah.
Other than the Seahawks, but.
All right, next question. Is Josh Allen the real deal?
I think he is. It kills me to say because I've been before last season. I thought Jared Stidham was going to be the number one quarterback in the division over Josh Allen, but I didn't believe in him. I knew he had talent. I just didn't think it could put it together. But after seeing him play against the Patriots twice and then against the Chiefs, it's tough for me to really say that he's not. The thing that does concern me is he does have those off games where he had those 3 really good games, but he had horrendous performances against the Jaguars, the Colts, Panthers, Falcons, and Jets. I think part of that is still him being young and still having inconsistencies, but as long as he doesn't get hurt, which is no guarantee based on his play style, I think he really is. I think he's just going to keep getting better. But we'll see next year if how much also has to do with Brian Daboll. If Brian Daboll leaves, is a lot of his success Daboll helping show him and help him get in through, sort of like McVay did with Goff. I think Daboll might have a small contributing factor, but I think Allen really is that good.
I'm going to say it depends on what we define as the real deal. Is he a very good quarterback that is a top 10 quarterback? Yes. Is he an elite quarterback? I'm still not going there. I don't think he's elite. I think he's right below elite because I still think he needs to show me what does he do against a good defense where he did not go up against the Patriots. He didn't go up against that against Kansas City. And the Patriots before that. So I need to see him against a good defense where they could actually try and stop him with different coverages and that sort of thing. And I want to see him without Brian Daboll. Those are the 2 things that are left on my bucket. If I had to rank him right now, I'd say he's probably a top 4 or 5 quarterback right now. And he's just right outside there, but you don't see elite quarterbacks have as many stinkers as he's had this year. Unless they're injured. So Patrick Mahomes, I still think there's that turf toe injury, which is why he
Yeah.
was up and down this year. Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady. You don't see that many bad games out of them. You see one, you see maybe two. You don't see five.
Yeah.
It's just a large number from someone where I can't say he's elite if he had that many. I think he's just right outside of there. He's grown on my list. I think a few weeks ago I'd probably put him at 10. Now I probably moved up to 5, 4. But he's definitely moved up. But it should be interesting to see how long his career is going to last, because number one, are people going to figure out how to play you? Number two, how long can he physically last running like this?
Yeah.
Where I know he's big, but like I said, Cam Newton, same sort of build, same sort of size. Cam Newton wasn't as good of a thrower as Josh. But
that's the only thing where if his running gets diminished like Cam's does, I think as long as his shoulder doesn't get hurt, he could. I don't know if he'll be able to.
It depends. Can he be a pocket passer?
He has the arm to do it. I don't know if he has the play style to do it.
Yeah. So that should be interesting to see. Next question. Thoughts on the 9 coaching vacancies?
There's a lot. Which I think typically the average is 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
So there's more than that this year. There isn't really a great destination though. Why'd you make that look?
Oh, we have this question twice.
There isn't really great destination. Like last year, there was the Chargers, which I thought was a great destination because they have a lot of talent. Mm-hmm. Bears might be based on if you believe in Justin Fields. Texans is they're talent devoid. The Giants are talent devoid. I thought Seahawks would have been an opening because of everything, but Pete Carroll's still there. But Saints are in cap hell. There isn't really that great destination. So like for Brian Flores, for instance, I think he should be the only one that really makes sense or a good destination is the Raiders, where you have a quarterback in play that can win you games. I don't think he's elite, but he's middle of the road upper. He's like that.
Top 15.
Yeah. Top 15 quarterback. They have talent on the roster. They missed a couple picks here and there, but they still have talent. They're a playoff team this year. So I think that's the only one. And then someone like Brian Flores, who I think is one of the best coaches in the league, which is not really saying much because there aren't really that many great coaches, but there isn't really a great destination for him to go other than really the Raiders. I
think it all depends on Chicago, what you feel about Justin Fields. If you like him, I think that would be a fantastic spot. If you don't, it wouldn't. And I know the Patriots weren't supposedly high on him, so that doesn't mean that sounds like it'd be a place that Josh won't want to go, especially now that they've hired someone as the GM. But I think the Raiders is probably the most appealing. And then even now recently it says that Ziegler and Josh are not considered the favorites for this, which is actually good for the Patriots because it would have sucked to lose Ziegler. I think would be the worst one to lose, and then Josh as well.
I think Josh would be the worst just because of Mac's development.
Because there are some rumors too that if Ziegler did leave, Scott Pioli might actually come back. But should be interesting with that. I would even think
Thomas Dimitroff too. I could see.
Yeah,
I haven't seen any rumors, but that would make sense.
Mm-hmm. But like I said, Raiders probably sounds most interesting. Next question: Patriots surprise offseason / training camp release / trade.
Yes. So I put this. I have 2.
Yeah.
Shaq Mason.
That's
or Jonathan Jones.
Is Jonathan Jones under contract?
Yes. Oh. If they release him, it's the cap $6.2 million, and it's $2 million cap hit.
Mm-hmm. Shaq Mason's a good one. That was one of the ones I had. So I'm gonna go with. I don't think it's as much a surprise, but just based on you signed him this last year, I think Devon Godchow. I think he's got to go.
Yep. One other one that I don't see happening, but I wouldn't be shocked based on just the money situation would also be Lawrence Guy. It would save them cap $3.7 million and only be a $750,000 cap hit. So I don't think they will, but based on that, depending on he was inconsistent this year. If you think he's taking a step back, that might be another one too. Even though he is a locker room guy and part of that culture that you want to build around.
Yeah, I think Shaq Mason's the best one. I could definitely see that happening.
Yep.
Next one. What Super Bowl matchup do you want to see, and what is the Super Bowl matchup you expect to see?
I want to see the Bengals and the 49ers because I don't really like the Rams, especially living out here on the West Coast, being around a lot of Rams fans. I just don't want to see them. I was going to say happy, but they can sometimes be obnoxious. And then I don't like how they went all in. Usually that doesn't bode for success. I think that could set a trend around the league, which might actually be good for the Patriots, but I don't want to see the Rams. So 49ers. And then I just don't want to see the Chiefs in the Super Bowl again. So the Super Bowl I want to see is Bengals 49ers. I think we're going to see Chiefs and Rams.
Same exact thing. I want to see the 49ers Bengals. I want to see Jimmy G win it. And it's not going to happen though. It's going to probably be the Chiefs and the Rams, and the Chiefs will probably win. Next question. Your thoughts on the taunting / unsportsmanlike penalties in the Tampa Bay game?
It was just atrocious. It's just Hockey Lee being like his dad, where trying to make the thinking that everyone came to see him instead of actually see the game, and to be so thin-skinned to call the unsportsmanlike penalty on Brady because he said mean words without even swearing at you. I don't get it at all. You have to know the situation, you have to know the place, and it's the reffing in the NFL the last, I'd say 10 plus years. It seems like it's getting worse and worse every year. And then this year especially was just atrocious. But to call those penalties in a key game like this in the playoffs, it just makes no sense. And it's something that the league has to find a way to correct, where either someone from the league office can overrule them if they're about to make a penalty like that. They can, if the league thinks that in that situation it's not warranted, they can overrule it. I doubt that'll ever happen, but they have to do something to correct the officiating as a whole in the league.
Yeah, or they're going to be able to fire them easily, or something where they should not be on the next playoff game based off that. I think the entire game was trying to be made about themselves, and not about the game itself. And in the playoffs, you're supposed to throw less flags, make the players play, and Hockey Lee did the exact opposite. And he's just like his father, and probably even worse. I think it was ridiculous. Next question. Which wide receiver remaining in the playoffs would you rather have? Contract included.
Contract included. I'd have to go with I'd say Cooper Kupp, just because he does everything for you. He can be that slot type receiver. He can be the slot type receiver. He can go deep on you. He'll catch pretty much everything. If contract wasn't included, I was thinking maybe, at least for the Patriots, either Cooper Kupp or Tyreek Hill, adding that deep threat for how fast Tyreek Hill is. His speed is just unbelievable. But I mean, Jamar Chase is good too. He's young. He's on a cheap deal. But I think Cooper Kupp just does everything you can ask of, except that fumble in the second half. But
I would say Jamar Chase, just because I think he can actually kind of do similar stuff as Kupp. I think he's really known for those big skinny posts and the regular posts, but he can line up in the slot too, and turn a 15-yard slant into like a 60-yard play. So I'd go with Chase, especially because of the contract situation there.
That's fair.
Next question. Where should Davante Adams land?
I'll let you answer that one first.
All right. So one spot that would make sense would be the Chargers, because they all like that cap space. But to stick with my Tom Brady prediction, he should land with the 49ers. I don't know if it could work cap wise, but you know how the cap is crap and you can manipulate in many ways and deal with the ramifications later on. I'd like to see him with Tom Brady in San Francisco, have him just have another weapon over there.
Yeah, so I think the Bucks make sense if Brady's there. I'm assuming and Gronk, he still was very productive this year, but he's not the same Gronk of old. They lost Antonio Brown. Chris Godwin tore his, I believe, ACL, and he's going to be out for most of next year and might not even re-sign with them anyway. So I think him going to the Bucs will give Brady another elite weapon. I could see him staying in Green Bay. If Aaron Rodgers stays in Green Bay, like I said, he's going to, I think Devontae Adams staying in Green Bay. So I could see that too. Another one I could see is, I don't think will happen, but the Seattle Seahawks. Wilson has had some griping about the roster and everything. If you add Devontae Adams to the Seahawks along with Metcalf on the other side, that will give them a pretty elite offense. And they're in a very tough division as it is with 3 playoff teams in it. So that might help them compete. I think their defense is still lacking a lot, but it'll give them another threat where they can at least try and outscore other opponents.
That's an interesting one. Next question. What are your thoughts on Sean Payton retiring? Do you think he's actually going to be retiring for long? And what do you think were the reasons? Or not even what do you think were the reasons? What are your just thought about the whole situation?
I could see him retiring entirely and then just pulling like a Bill Cowher where he just does TV. It's a lot more relaxing. I think ultimately he's going to retire, take 2 or 3 years off, and then go back to coaching. I think just the situation that he's in right now with the Saints where they don't have a quarterback, they're in cap hell again. They're probably not going to win the next couple of years, especially if Tom Brady stays in there, even though he does have the recipe for beating Tom Brady. I think just him, it wasn't worth the stress, especially at his age, which he's only 58 or 59, so he's still young. Mm-hmm. But I think for him, he just didn't want to have to deal with an entire rebuild. And I think based on everything that he's done for the team probably knows that too, and they're comfortable with that, where he'll take a year or 2 off and then maybe go to Dallas or go somewhere else.
Yep, that's my thing. I think he'll take a year or 2 off, get probably around the same amount of money from Fox replacing Aikman if Aikman goes to Prime. And then I think when Dallas fires McCarthy, that he's going to be the next head coach for Dallas. Because there was an interesting story out there where they were originally going to trade for him a few years ago, but that was ended up being nixed because of the whole Antonio Davis.
Anthony Davis
saga with the Pelicans. Is that
yes.
New Orleans Pelicans. Kevin. I'm watching basketball now with these people, but
I was surprised to learn that it's the same owner and same GM for both the Pelicans and the Saints. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was something that was interesting, and I don't know why someone would want to be the GM for 2 different sports teams. I feel like it's one team is hard enough. I can't imagine doing 2 teams. But they probably are very intertwined there. So very interesting story if you want to read it on Barstool, or you could probably find it somewhere else, but that's why I saw it. So nice little story to go on that. Last question. If you could trade Mac Jones for any starting quarterback out there today, contract included, who would you? And then if you did, who would you entertain?
That's a good question. The only one for certain would be Patrick Mahomes, even with his contract, which I know is insane. He's just such a different level where he can do everything on the field. I know he has really good weapons in KC, but just his ability is just unfathomable. And then the cap is going up the next few years. It's going up this year from, I believe, 182 to 208. And then there's rumors that it's supposed to, within 2 years, go up to close to 300 million. So cap down the line doesn't really scare me. Josh Allen, I wouldn't, even though he's shown he can be elite just because of the contract situation he has where it is a lot. And then his style of play, he could get injured and then that could be a derailment. The only other people that I would consider other than Patrick Mahomes is Joe and Justin Herbert. If you think that their career trajectory will be higher than Mac Jones, they're both still on their rookie deals, only 1 year further than Mac. They both are in that near elite level. It just, if you think Mac can get to that level and you think he's not going to get to where Justin Fields or Justin Herbert and Joe Burrows is, then you trade them for him. And the thing, I'll just leave it at that.
I'm pretty similar there. I think the only surefire person I trade for would be Patrick Mahomes. I would have said Deshaun Watson before all
Yeah.
this stuff went out with him. And even if he did resolve all of his lawsuits, what's to say someone else won't try and go after him?
Yep.
And then even if someone else doesn't try and go after him, that hasn't come out yet. If he did all this stuff beforehand, let's say it was true, eventually you're gonna slip and you're gonna do the same thing again. So I
Yeah.
just wouldn't trust having him and paying that much for him based on that risk. I wouldn't take the risk. I would say the only person surefire thing I think would be Mahomes. Allen, I don't think he's gonna last long enough if he keeps up the amount of running he does.
Yep.
And I don't think anyone else really makes much sense based on
Russell
their age.
Wilson. A couple of years ago, I would have said maybe Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Getting older. He's only 33. He did show slippage this year. I don't think Dak Prescott is the guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mac, given his intelligence, his field awareness, I think he can have a better career. He might not put up the same numbers, but I'd rather have him, assuming he continues the same trajectory that we saw this year, that we saw Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow take from year 1 to year 2. If he follows up, which I think he will.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers old and he's a loser. Tom Brady, I love Tom Brady, but I don't know how much longer he'll keep doing it, even though he hasn't shown any sign of slip his entire career.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think like you said, Herbert and Burrow, I would think about, but I would need to do a little bit more research on them, as far as them, just to kind of see how, because with Herbert, we've even seen with Bill, he's been able to stop him, and it seems like they actually like going up against him because they know how to stop him. It doesn't seem like he processes that quickly. And that's something you really want from a quarterback, someone that can process quickly, understand the situation. And if it's something that he's not as good as Mac with, I would rather take Mac in that situation. Burrow, I think, is the big one, just to say where he's got a better arm, but he's a pretty similar style quarterback. So is it something where Mac can get to that Burrow level? Would be the big question. Well, we don't know. So we have to see after one more year. But there's only a handful of people I would think about doing it too.
Yep, I agree entirely.
All right, so I think we actually even talked about our predictions really for next week. Both of us really think it'll probably be the Chiefs and the Rams going forward to the Super Bowl. Hopefully it's going to be the 49ers. And who knows? Jimmy always finds a way to win, even if he isn't good in the game. So he's got that Italian
I think if the
him.
49ers win, it's a more of their defense leading them and the Matthew Stafford pulling a Matthew Stafford, where late in the game he throws a pick six or something like that.
I can see that happening.
Jimmy's going to win the game. I think it's more either the 49ers defense or Stafford losing the game.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to find out. So it'll be a fun 2 games to watch this weekend. So we'll catch you next week, kind of recap these games, have some more different questions to go over. And if there's time, maybe we can start breaking down some Patriots information, but we'll be with you the next few weeks. And then eventually we'll go to probably an every other week when there's not as much kind of going on. So again, follow us on @Pat's 300 Level Pod on Twitter and Instagram, YouTube as well. If you can watch the videos there, subscribe, rate, and review. And the blog will be coming at some point this off season. So we'll look forward to catching you next time.